Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Hello there. I know, it's not going to be Crown today. Hope you don't mind me filling in for him for a day or two as he's going through some stuff right now. Anyways, hope you'll enjoy today's stories nonetheless. I encountered not one but two Karens today. I work at a state park and it just started a month ago, so I was feeling comfortable working here. It was a surprisingly cool day, around 65 degrees. I was working with my friend Jack, random name, and we were driving back to the shop. We had just finished jump, starting another co-worker's truck because the work trucks are older than my boss, who's only 25. As we were driving down the road, an entitled Mother 1, suddenly ran out into the street and Jack had to slam on the brakes. We were driving around in a Polaris Ranger and there's no windshield on ours. I was holding the jump starter kit and almost flew out of the window due to this crazy woman's actions. She flashed a smile and said, entitled Mother 1, "Hello boys! We're out on a play date and we're ready to go home, but our battery is dead." I honestly didn't want to help her, mainly because I had almost become a human sled. I put the jump box in the bed of the Ranger, getting ready to start charging it. I said, "Sure," but Jack cut me off. "Jack, we need special permission to do this." So we called my supervisor, who is super chill, and he explained it nicely to us. In simpler terms, if the battery gets damaged, the state park can be held liable for any damage, so we couldn't help. I kindly explained this to them, and that's when entitled Mother 2 popped out of the van. Entitled Mother 2, "So you're not gonna help us?" she asked in a snarky and rude voice. I reiterated the rules, and the two entitled mothers started pestering us with entitled comments. Entitled Mother 1, "How about this? You jumpstart our car and we'll keep it a secret." Me, "I'm sorry, man, but rules are rules. Plus, if I did jumpstart your car, I would be breaking the law." Then, one of their children chimed in, "Kid, Mommy, I want to go home." Entitled Mother 1, "I know, sweetie, but no one will know. You have a jumpstart thing right on the seat. Just grab it and hook it up." She started to get into an enraged Karen mode. I was about ready to just shock myself, and Jack was really angry and dropped in an angry tone. "Jack, listen, man, we can't help you. There are many other people who can give you a jump, but not us." Entitled Mother 1 entered extreme Karen mode. "My God, how dare you talk to an adult like that? I have 4 children with me. I don't want them to act like you stupid teenagers. My God, don't you know any manners around an adult?" Jack and I looked at each other, nodded, and headed back for the Ranger. Entitled Mother 2, "How dare you walk away from us? Get back here." Jack started up the Ranger, put it in drive, and started to move forward when entitled Mother 2 ran in front of us. Entitled Mother 2, "Stop! Where are you going?" "Ah!" she shrieked. Me, "We're getting back to work," I replied. Jack began to reverse, and entitled Mother 2 ran behind us. Entitled Mother 2, "Oh no, you don't," she said. I was super upset and yelled at her to move out of the way before we get our superintendent involved. Jack then put the Ranger into forward and started turning the wheel to the right so we could drive through the grass and get on a dirt road that led back to the shop. That's when I heard a thunk. I turned around and saw entitled Mother 2 trying to grab the jump starter kit. I immediately reached behind me, yanked it from her, and held it tightly. Entitled Mother 2, "No. Stop touching me." She shrieked. Jack then slammed on the gas and we jumped the curb and tore through the grass to the road. We tore down the road and did a wicked drift around a curve. Jack and I started laughing as we sighed in relief, and that's when it all escalated. We got to the shop and told our supervisor about what happened. He said he would let our security truck know so they would stop and go talk to them. I stepped outside to put on some bug spray, and then everything escalated. 2 police cars pulled up. 4 police officers got out of the cruisers. Cop 1, "Hi, we received a call reporting that 2 workers threatened these 2 women and their children and possibly tried to sexually assault one of the individuals." Me, "All right, this is unbelievable." I finished spraying myself and went up to the cop. He sat me down in the cruiser and I started telling my story. I was beyond upset, so I tried to keep myself together. I'm 16 years old and have autism. When I get really stressed, I break down mentally. I explained myself while sobbing my eyes out. I got out of the cruiser and sat on the hood as I was told. Jack was still being questioned by the other cruiser. Both of the moms got out of the second car, and one of the officers talked to her. I saw him talk to the lady from whom I had pulled the jump box. She then stopped talking and pointed at me and then at her hip. The officer nodded and started heading my way. I'd seen enough cop shows, so I got on my knees, put my hands behind my head, and just collapsed face first on the cement, crying, "Cop 3, come on, bud, get up." Me through tears. "Don't you have to search me first?" Cop 3. He started laughing. "No, we're gonna go look at the security cameras from the pool entrance since it points down where you guys were." I thought I would have been charged with assault since the lady did hit her pelvis against the back of the Ranger bed. We got to the main office, and Jack and I sat in front of the monitors with the two mothers right by us. We watched. We saw the argument, and then entitled Mother 2 on the screen, sneaking up to the back of the Ranger and grabbing the jump box. Just as it happened, I grabbed it and yanked it away from her, and she hit the bed of the Ranger. Cop 4. "Well, it looks like you two were right." Entitled Mother 2, you're under arrest for attempted theft. Entitled Mother 2. What? No, this isn't fair. Those selfish individuals should be in trouble. The cop then yelled at her to shut up as loudly as possible, and she stopped talking. Entitled Mother 1 started to dial her husband's cell phone, but he didn't answer. To this day, this has been one of the best work stories we tell at the lunch table. And the bonus of this day? Entitled Mother 1 had to call a tow truck. My friend, I'll call her Sandy, worked at a travel agency in British Columbia, Canada. It was a small owner-operated business with the owner and 3 employees, including my friend. Everyone worked Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of my friend's co-workers, I'll call her Jane, an older woman in her early to mid-60s, was a longtime nuisance employee. Among other sketchy behavior, Jane was always scamming ways to take time off over and above her official paid vacation time. In order to make up for the lost hours, she would claim overtime hours, paid by supposedly going into the office in her off hours to finish up work without being requested by the owner to do so. Despite being caught in her own lies on a number of occasions and being warned about trying to claim for unsanctioned overtime, the owner of the travel agency was reluctant to officially reprimand Jane or get rid of her. The reason being is the owner discovered after she had hired Jane that Jane had actually been fired from her previous job at another local travel agency for pulling the same stunts. However, Jane had sued her former employer for unfair dismissal and had won a settlement. After a few years of my friend Sandy working at the travel agency, the owner was ready to retire and offered to sell the business to my friend. Sandy took her up on the deal and took over the business while keeping on Jane and the other employee. Once again, just as the previous owner was afraid to get rid of Jane, so was Sandy for fear of being sued. When Sandy took over the business, she instituted guidelines regarding taking time off, and she established an official no overtime policy. Jane would still try with her shenanigans, but was far less successful in getting what she wanted with my friend in charge. However, Jane still had one trick up her sleeve when she wanted to take time off on a whim. Sandy was a divorced single mom of 2 boys who were heavily involved in youth hockey. She would sometimes leave the office an hour or 2 before closing to get her boys to hockey practice or a game. In order to avoid requesting in person and potentially being denied, Jane would wait for Sandy to be out of the office to book a day off if she didn't feel like coming into work or had made plans. Sandy would then arrive at work the next morning only to discover that Jane wasn't coming in. Despite this happening a number of times, Sandy would usually let it slide since there was now a definite no overtime policy. Therefore, Jane could no longer claim to come into work on the weekend or after hours in order to try and make up for the day off. She would either miss out on a day's pay, in turn saving Sandy money as the owner, or it would come out of her remaining paid vacation days. Moreover, 2 people in the office at one time could usually handle everything. Jane not coming in was really a no-loss situation for Sandy. There was one time, however, when Sandy was going to be away for 1 or 2 work days just before the weekend to take her boys to a hockey tournament. She told both Jane and the other employee, both verbally and in writing, that they could not book time off for the dates in question since she would be away and needed both of them in the office. Within a few days of giving this notice, Sandy went into the office on a Saturday to do some paperwork and go through the sales for the week. This is when she discovered that, only the day before, Jane had booked a trip for her daughter and son-in-law to Las Vegas, as well as a plane ticket in her name to Calgary where her daughter lived. Both the trip to Vegas and the ticket to Calgary coincided with the dates Sandy would be out of the office. Sandy then checked the vacation booking schedule to further discover that Jane had indeed booked the days off that she had expressly been told she couldn't have. Not mentioning she had discovered the travel Jane had booked for herself and her daughter. Sandy emailed Jane telling her she would have to deny her the days off since she had already been told they were unavailable because she, Sandy, would be away and needed Jane in the office. Through a continued series of email exchanges, Jane replied and outright lied to Sandy with some excuse about her daughter getting some long-awaited medical treatment or surgery, and she needed to go to Calgary to help out for a few days and look after her granddaughter. Sandy replied to this lie by telling Jane she knew about the trip she had booked to Vegas for her daughter and son-in-law. That Jane's trip to Calgary was most likely to babysit her granddaughter while her daughter was in Vegas, and that she would still have to deny Jane the days off especially. Since she booked them after being told they were unavailable, Jane countered in her subsequent reply without even addressing the fact that she had been caught in a lie, that she had been a dedicated employee of the travel agency for several years and couldn't understand why she was being treated so unfairly after all she had done for the business. She then wrote that since she wasn't being treated as a valued employee, she had no choice but to retire and was given her 2 weeks' notice. Despite Jane's threat, Sandy replied that she would still be unable to grant her the days off and left it at that without making any mention of Jane's threat to retire. Sandy then contacted her accountant, who also acted as her de facto business advisor, and explained what had happened with Jane. Also aware of Jane's previous shenanigans, Sandy's accountant told her that this was the outcome she had been looking for with Jane, and she had it all in writing. He told her that Jane had essentially resigned, retired, and all Sandy needed to do was honor Jane's desire to do so. Let her finish out her 2 weeks or pay her 2 weeks' wages in lieu with no further severance pay legally required since she hadn't been fired. The following Monday, Sandy went into the office early, accompanied by her longtime boyfriend to act as a witness. She put Jane's belongings from her desk into a box and took the things that were property of the business. Since Jane was old school and had resisted inputting client information in the computer database, this also included a small box filled with index cards which had client phone numbers, addresses, credit card information, and other personal information noted on them. In the meantime, the other employee had arrived for work, and they all waited for Jane to show up. Jane arrived just before 9. Zero acting as though nothing had happened and greeted everyone with a good morning as she walked through the door. However, she was apparently taken slightly aback when she noticed Sandy's boyfriend seated in the far corner of the office. At this point, Jane was midway to her desk when Sandy informed her that there was no need to go any further and that she had accepted Jane's notification of retirement. She then handed Jane a check compensating her for the hours she had worked in the current pay period, as well as 2 weeks' wages in lieu of Jane finishing out her final 2 weeks before her retirement. Jane was dumbfounded and went into panic mode, "But I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire." Sandy responded that indeed she had retired, given her notice, and had proof of it in writing. All Jane could do was continue repeating, "But I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire," while unsuccessfully attempting to get the support of the other employee who refused to come to her defense. Sandy then pointed to the box containing Jane's belongings, wished her a happy retirement, and told her to leave the office. Jane quickly rifled through the box and noticed that the small box containing the index cards with client information was not there. She insisted that Sandy return it to her, which Sandy refused to do, explaining that it was property of the business, contained personal client information, and that she would be in violation of Canadian privacy laws if she were to let Jane take it. Jane's shock had now turned to obstinance, and she refused to leave without the box. Both the other employee and Sandy's boyfriend had started to get involved, repeatedly telling Jane to just leave. Sandy then informed Jane that if she didn't leave, they would have to call the Rarkshin Canadian police, at which point Sandy's boyfriend dialed 911 to inform the dispatcher of a disgruntled former employee at Sis Travel Agency who was refusing to leave the premises. Within a few minutes, 2 police officers arrived, and Jane immediately ran to the door ranting about being fired and about the missing box of client info. In order to de-escalate the situation, One police officer told Jane to come outside and explain to him her side of the story. The other officer remained in the office to hear Sandy's side of the story, agreeing that Jane was not legally entitled to the box of client info. The other officer then re-entered the business and told Jane to wait outside. He said that Jane was insisting that Sandy was holding on to her personal belongings, namely a box of important information. Both Sandy and the officer who had spoken to her explained the contents of the box to the other officer, who in turn agreed it was not Jane's property. The police officers then picked up the larger box of Jane's personal belongings, took it outside to Jane, and told her she needed to go home. To rub salt in Jane's wounds the next day, Sandy put up a large sign in the window of the business, congratulating Jane on her retirement, and even put a small announcement in the local newspaper doing the same thing. The icing on the piece of revenge cake was Sandy, when filling out the necessary government forms for when an employee quits, gets fired, retires, made sure to check the box labeled retired for the reason for Jane no longer being employed. By doing so, Jane was ineligible to collect unemployment insurance benefits. My girlfriend and I recently got a rescue dog and everything has been going well. Getting his vaccines, neutering, etc., and all vet bills have been split 50-50. He is still uninsured as we still have one vaccine left. Until that point, any other treatment we need to pay cash. Yesterday, I got home from work and my partner wanted to show me the dog's newest favorite treat, grapes. I was shocked to say the least. So off to the emergency vets we go. The treatment we got him was gold standard to reduce the risk of any long-term impact on his liver kidneys. However, this then cost $1,200. I do believe she made a genuine mistake, but the way I see it is that this is dog ownership 101. She is a dog person having had dogs her whole life. It makes me sick that I will have to pay $600 for her feeding our dog 3 grapes. Am I the jerk for asking her to pay the entire bill as this was her mistake? And now, for some comments, if you agreed 50-50, you should pay half. End of story. Otherwise, you'll have to have some ridiculous tribunal to determine whose fault it is anytime the dog get himself screwed up. She made a mistake, but you're a team and you need to share the consequences. You're not the jerk. A dog person who has had dogs their whole life should know what dogs can eat, and if you don't, you at least know there are things dogs shouldn't be eating. When I got my puppy, anytime I wanted to feed her something new, it took 5 seconds to Google "can dogs eat banana" or whatever. Sharing costs should be for unavoidable things, not carelessness. You're the jerk gently. I get it was a dumb mistake on her part. But this is a responsibility you two agreed to take on together, and you don't get to pick and choose when you're responsible. Also, you should have already had pet insurance, as there's no vaccine requirement. Usually, you just have a 2-week period for the insurance to kick in, and you're good.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.